welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. This is episode 165, joined with Connor Carsons on the call. The NFL season's officially in the books. Post-Super Bowl, off-season's right around the corner. Interesting NFL season to say the least. Interesting Super Bowl as well. Very good playoffs. Feel like every round and every game was pretty entertaining. But, man, what are the thoughts post-Super Bowl right now?
I think it went the way it did. I feel like everything that happened throughout the regular season was just for us to bottle up everything that we watched the Chiefs and all these barely wins that they have, and then to just to actually get embarrassed in the Super Bowl, made it all worth it. Mm-hmm. So it's great. Congrats to the Eagles.
I mean, this was just kind of a telling sign. Chiefs kind of really just own that AFC.
Yeah.
I think they just have a lot of teams number in the AFC. We already talked about the Buffalo game, but going into this one with the kind of week bye, it was interesting because you always say teams forget how to play football against the Chiefs.
This was a team that remembered how to play football, I'll tell you that.
This was just really, to me, the Eagles playing their best game of the year.
Yeah.
They played the biggest moment of the year. Game of the year. And the biggest game of the year, biggest moment of the year when they had to have it. Jalen Hurts was great. Had that one bad pick, but it ended up being just basically an arm punt anyways.
Mm-hmm.
That D-line.
Wow.
I don't think this is probably since the Tampa Bay game with the Chiefs. I've never seen a D-line only go with 4, 0 blitz.
They did blitz.
Didn't blitz not one time and get to Patrick Mahomes like they were sending everybody.
6 sacks or something.
That was an all-time great performance by that D-line. Against the Chiefs O-line, that is very wishy-washy.
But it's not bad.
But it's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
They do have their weak points, but when you're going up against the Eagles D-line, you have to be in check. You have to.
You have Carter, Jordan Davis, and then you have Huff is also in there, Sweat, and they got Brandon Graham back for the Super Bowl, who was out for 7 weeks or something.
Yeah,
so they didn't even have to blitz. You don't have to. Your D-line's that good, you don't even have to.
And then in your secondary, when you have DeJean, Slay, Mitchell, you can really play them straight up, which is what the Chiefs couldn't do. That's what I was so interested by, because Spags, with how he game plans and how they run defenses, they really can just play a lot of teams straight up in the AFC, because I feel like throughout these playoffs, they didn't really have that or go up against that elite wide receiver or that elite tandem in the receiving game. You had Keon Coleman and Mac Hollins with the Bills and Amari Cooper, but they didn't have the dominant force. Same with even I'm thinking anybody in the AFC really.
The Texans.
The Texans, they had Nico Collins.
Yeah, but who didn't have Diggs or Tank Dell. So
you're only focused on that. So you're not going to be able to play straight up one-on-one man coverage against Devontae Smith, against AJ Brown, consistently. It's just not going to happen. And looking at the AFC, and who they've played to get to this point, I know they had the bye, but even of all the teams who made the playoffs in the AFC, what dominant wide receiver one would they have matched up with? It wouldn't have been on the Ravens. The Bills didn't really have one. The Texans had Nico Collins, but that was really it offensively in the receiving game because everybody was hurt. The Chargers don't have one. The Broncos don't have one other than Sutton. They haven't really had to face a true upper tier, top 5, 6, 7 wide receiver in the league. And you can argue Devontae Smith would have been the number 1 on any of those AFC teams that went and made the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's how good the wide receiver duo is with them two. So they just killed them in the one-on-ones. You just throw the ball up to Devontae Smith and AJ Brown.
Yeah, they just got open. Hurts had time. He just he didn't panic. Other than that one throw, he was whatever. And that was just a go route, and he just underthrew, or the guy jumped it. And then it ended up leading into a pick six anyway. I'm pretty sure that was the same drive that Cooper DeJean got it. But, Gallus Goddard, everybody did their part. It's not like he was trying to force feed AJ Brown, or Saquon relatively had a quiet game. And then on the end, he kind of just started to get those chunk yards. But, the whole line looked awesome. Defense looked great. We got the Jalen Hurts that we're supposed to be getting. And Yeah, they just beat them in all facets of the game. I mean, the Chiefs just look so bad. Because we always have the argument. I'm like, well, there's teams that are better than the Chiefs. Like, there are. The Chiefs are not the best team in the league. Record-wise, they are, but they're not the best team in the league. And you could say that the Eagles or the Lions or the Bills are the best team in the league. And they played the Bills, they beat them, and then they played the legitimately best team in the league, the Eagles, and got that aspect.
So it
is the Eagles NFL now.
You think so?
I think so.
I think these conversations right after we got done watching it.
Right as the game ended, we had this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, the Chiefs are still going to be good. Like, I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to, like, fucking not make the playoffs next year. Like, but they'll still be fine. But that Chiefs defense, or that Eagles defense and that Eagles offense is fucking gross, dude. This isn't a team that just wins games. This is a team that dominantly wins games.
And they're so young throughout the entire team.
Yes, and there is you have the Lions who can dominantly win games, but they're also giving up 40 points a game, and because of how hurt their defense was, and their defense still isn't even that good healthy. So the Eagles have a top 5 defense, maybe the best defense, maybe a top 5 offense, and I don't see any of their coaches leaving, other than Kellen Moore left.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not that big of a deal, as long as that defense is still hooping.
It's just going to be interesting because they're going to end up losing to people, but when you have such an aggressive GM like they do, to just go out and make moves and make the necessary adjustments in the offseason.
They draft so well.
Like, think about where they were at the end of last year. In the gutter, they're talking about Sirianni needs to go. Everybody needed to go at the end of last year. That's how they were talking about it.
Even this season they were saying Sirianni should go.
So, and to go out, you already had Jalen Carter. You draft 2 stud corners. Cooper DeJean can play a little bit of safety. He can do a little bit of everything in the secondary. And then, you draft so well, and you continue to just hit and hit and hit in the draft, and then you go make the splash trade for somebody like A.J. Brown. You go make the splash, they're going to be in the Miles Garrett sweepstakes.
Saquon.
You signed Saquon. This is the thing that I think you would want. If you're a fan of an NFL franchise, you need to be aggressive. If you always want your team to be aggressive, this is kind of the thing that Dallas fans are frustrated with being in the same division because they are a bigger market and just Dallas is just everything in football.
Dallas just doesn't attack free agents.
They don't attack free agents, and they kind of whiff on the draft, which the draft is easier said than done. So I can't blame teams, but the aggressive nature to go get a Saquon Barkley when your running game was already elite with any running back because of your O-line play, going and getting somebody like Saquon Barkley just took the top off. I think this was obviously the worst matchup the Chiefs could have faced because I think if it was the Lions or the Commanders, I think the Chiefs would have won.
Yeah, definitely. And the Eagles, it's just that defense, man. That defense has just played so good. And obviously the Lions are going to be coming in with 15 people on IR on their defense. So the Chiefs obviously are going to score more. The Chiefs scored 22 points, but it did not look like a 22. It looked a lot.
They were down 34-0.
If you actually watched the game, it was an ass whipping. It wasn't no 18-point loss. It should have been a 40-point loss. I'm actually shocked the Chiefs scored over 20 points.
It just, from basically the first 2 Chiefs drives, I kind of understood.
3 and outs.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this could end up being like the Tampa Bay Bucks game because of how much pressure they got to Mahomes with only bringing 4. God forbid they ever brought a blitz. He might have got
They did a really good job doing the Chiefs run RPOs so much. And they did a really good job of covering the middle of the field on an RPO because he'll pull it and instantly just throw it right to Rashee Rice or Juju. He was throwing it to a lot, and that's how they got a couple of their first downs. And they didn't run the ball at all.
No,
the Chiefs, they did not run the ball at. They had 4 attempts at halftime or something.
Well, you got down so quick.
Still, you're not even running the ball on your first possession or your second possession or your third possession. The Eagles didn't even score on their first possession. So I don't know why are we abandoning the run so early? And you still have Pacheco, who's even if he's not 100%, but he's still there. Kareem Hunt is still 100%. I think they overthink it so much. I think they were overthinking so much, and right as they went down 14-0, they were okay. Then they become one-dimensional. And that was, and then it makes it even easier to fucking guard them, basically.
Because
And
they had chances to get back in the game.
Oh yeah, Mahomes looked awful. He looked terrible. He threw that pick. That pick six was, I don't even know where he was throwing the ball. And then the second one, he got bumped and it kind of like spiked. But the linebacker just made a good catch. Yeah, the linebacker just made a good catch and held on to it, which most linebackers don't hang on to that ball there. But he'll be a free agent after this season, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring him back. But yeah, I mean, that offense just looked all out of shapes. That defense was getting torn up. Yeah, the Eagles just knew what to do. The Avengers had to spin twice on Thanos. The Eagles had to spin twice on the Chiefs. Like, it is what it is.
The Eagles, going into this game, I knew Saquon wasn't going to have that big of a game because
I think everybody knew that.
The one thing you're not going to do
is run the ball on the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. The only way to beat the Chiefs is kind of how the Eagles did defensively, being stout on that side of the ball, and then making the big plays when you can. But it just comes down to Mahomes, really. I think once that pressure got to him in those first two drives, he was like, oh shit, so I'm going to have to put the cape on. I can't get any protection. I can't get any real
running
time.
Around.
And then he does get out of the pocket on a crucial drive that I felt like really did lose them the game, was that D-Hop drop.
Oh,
D-Hop would have took for like...
Oh, no, the middle of the field.
Yeah, the one where he was wide open middle of the field and he dropped it because he had nobody.
I mean, he put it like right here on the side, but like, you're an NFL receiver. Like, you're DeAndre Hopkins. Like, you need to catch that ball.
It wasn't that great of a ball, but for Mahomes under duress, running out of the pocket, scrambling, trying to make a play, I expect D-Hop to catch that and take that another 20 yards because there was nobody around him. So that play right there was just so deflating for the defense. They showed Chris Jones on the sideline.
He dropped to his knees.
Dropped
to his knees. That's so funny.
I was just like, the defense kind of, I feel like, lost gas there because of how quick the 3-and-outs were going. But it's just like, once they got constant pressure on Mahomes and they got a big lead and they could play with the lead because the Eagles playing with the lead, it's over.
You could tell at halftime that like they were so defeated. Like, it was over. Like, there was no chance. Like, you saw the sideline, they're just like sitting there and just like, Travis Kelce had like just same look on his face. Like, no one, like, they knew it was over. Like, they knew they were getting dominated and they got killed. And Travis Kelce's mulling retirement. I mean, I wouldn't really be shocked at either or. If he comes back, I'm like, okay. And if he retires, then I'm like, okay. Well, he's one of the top tight ends ever.
This would be like a tough way to go out. But at the end of the day, like, this is the first year we saw real regression from Kelce. And it's just like, if you bring him back, he's already making a lot of money. And I know it's Travis Kelce, but like from a business standpoint and the GM standpoint, like, is the money we're paying Travis Kelce? We're already paying Mahomes. We already have some holes on the O-line that we need to address. Like,
they have a free agent they need to bring back, Trey Smith.
Yeah, so like, it's looking at, and he's going to be a hefty price tag for how many teams want him.
Oh, yeah. He's a bear.
So, and then it's like, I think you could look in a different direction. This is a really good tight end draft. If you wanted to just go draft one and maybe bring Kelce back one more year, see what you can do. But I mean, they got a star in Xavier Worthy. You're going to get Rashee Rice back. Like, you're going to get him back. Like, Pacheco hopefully doesn't get hurt, like, at some point throughout the year. So you're going to have him back healthy, ready to go next year. But like, I feel like this is kind of like what they did in Tampa. Like, they lost to Tampa, they went to the offseason, filled the holes that they needed, and they were right back to where they were next to the year.
Well, then was it Tampa and then they lost to the Bengals?
Yeah.
Okay, so are the Chiefs due for some regression? Yes. But like, you could have also said that after their first Super Bowl or the second Super Bowl.
I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to be a shell of themselves.
No, they're going to come out and they're going to, like, they need to come out and show that, like, people why they were about to three-peat. Like, I need to see a lot more from the Chiefs next year. Like, which is crazy to say from, like, a 15-win team. But, like, you do not look like a 15-win team. You don't look anything near... Like, I could pull out 9 wins from that Bengals team, or however many wins they had, that were so much tougher than your 15 that you had. Like, and it just shows you, like, there's levels. There's just levels to winning. And the Chiefs showed me all year that they were cool with just barely winning. And, like, I think that came back and bit them in the ass.
See, because the thing is, like, we could see some regression for sure, but if nobody was able to beat the Chiefs this year with how they just got dominated and how bad they did look when you were watching the games, even though they were winning, then I'm just like, what the fuck is Buffalo gonna do to make me think Buffalo's gonna get it done next year? What are the Ravens gonna do to make it? And those are the two top teams with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. So I'm like, unless the Bengals got their shit together and got back to it.
As much as I dog on the Bengals, like they are good. They are very good. They are one of the teams, like the top three teams. It's the Bills, Ravens, and Bengals that can beat the Chiefs. Like that's it. They just had such a bad start, like they usually do, and just never recovered from it. And I don't know. I think it'll be different for the Bengals next year. I mean, there's just so many other, like the only other team that could maybe like put up a fight is the Chargers, just because they're in division and they see them so much.
I guess the same argument for the Chargers. I feel like the same thing goes for the Broncos because they have a really good defense.
The Broncos,
Bo Nix isn't Justin Herbert, but I need to see them go through a really good offseason if I'm the Broncos offensively, because that defense is stout. That defense is top 5. 6 in the league. Same with the Chargers. So it's just like it's gonna. Like, it would have to take a team like maybe the Texans if they got fully healthy one time, because they have a really, really good defense and they played the Chiefs really well. It's just like the Chiefs were at kind of their lowest from a playing standpoint, and they still won 15 games, but they just run the AFC. Like, there's nothing.
They're going to run it until someone takes them down.
And the only team that's been able to do that has been the Bengals in this recent period with the Chiefs. So I'm just like, what? I thought this was the year for Buffalo. I really did. I thought this could have been a year for the Ravens, but they couldn't beat Buffalo. Like, I just think it comes down to a point where it would have to be like a Chiefs have to go on the road scenario again. But then I'm just like, do I really think they're going to lose if they go to Buffalo with how much they've beaten Buffalo in the playoffs? Like, it's just matchups. Like, it's just matchups at this point. Like, it would take a Myles Garrett level move, and we'll get into that, for like me to change my mind on the AFC playoff picture, because I just think yes, there's gonna be a regression,
like a big move that could almost shift like
the
whole
Saquon
team
to the Eagles.
Like let's say like a Saquon type beat.
But then I'm like, there could be a move like that, but the Chiefs are also knowing what they have to do this offseason. Still have Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the sport. Probably miss their actual best receiver in Rashee Rice. You still have Xavier Worthy on the other side, who's going to be a star. Like, I think they're going to be fine, but in terms of regression, like, I'm taking the Chiefs to get out the AFC again next year. Like, I just am. Like, I just am. So, like, that's just kind of the mindset I am at right now. Even if Travis Kelce retires, I'm probably picking him to come out of the AFC next year until a team, like, shows me something in the AFC. Because we talk about the AFC and all the quarterbacks they have, all the star quarterbacks they have, and everything else like that. The dogs are in the NFC.
There's dogs and leaders.
Yeah.
All right. Like Deion Sanders, dogs and leaders. You got dogs in the NFC. You got leaders in the AFC. Like, you want some real, like, guys you're going into the trenches with, you're looking at the NFC. Like, you got your flashy guys in the AFC, but you go over to the NFC, you got some winners. You got some winners. Jared Goff, 6 touchdowns, perfect passer rating. No one can do that.
But Chiefs regression could be due. Offseason will tell us a lot about the AFC and the landscape, but we can get into kind of the two other bigger stories. Myles Garrett requesting a trade.
Never thought it would be done. I thought he was a Brown.
Didn't he say something about staying like right as the season ended too?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I was so confused about when like it came out, and I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, Myles Garrett is like one of those guys you look at as like, okay, he's a Brown for life. Like, you just don't trade him. You don't, like, he'll always sign back, like, this kind of stuff. Like, but I guess he's finally hit the point of no return, where he's like, okay, he sees that the team is taking a very weird direction. Yeah, and he doesn't want to do it anymore, and I don't blame him. But
it's also like players, like, different positions, but where they're at and talent-wise at their positions is like Saquon and Myles Garrett, right? So it's like he left a bad team and went to the fucking Super Bowl that very next year.
And you don't think other people are looking at that?
Starting to realize that. It was like Myles Garrett was like, could you imagine if I pivoted and made a move like that?
Be like, hey, what if I went to like Dallas or something, or I ended up going to like one of these up and coming teams like Chicago or something? like, and maybe we can make the same like run, which is like would be pretty cool.
In terms of destinations, I'm taking Dallas out of it because that's just not a move Dallas is going to make. And Dallas has a lot of holes. I understand you bring in Myles Garrett, but with their cap situation already and the holes they do have already on the team, they don't have a run game. They have some pieces on the O-line they're going to be missing. Like, the defense is kind of shaky outside of Micah Parsons. So that's just not a move I think they make.
Their holes are more on offense, like.
But you gotta think you're giving up multiple picks, plus you're bringing in Myles Garrett's
contract. I have no problem giving up the picks. Like,
no, I don't either.
Because obviously we're like, you're at that point you're thinking, you're like, okay, we're probably gonna be good. Like, and they probably will be good. Like, they're gonna be a 10-win team next year, 11-win team. Like, barring any injuries, obviously. But like, if you can get another pass rusher to go with, I know DeMarcus Lawrence was out like all season.
And he's a free agent. And he's just older.
He's a free agent. Yeah, and he's an older guy. But I think that their stuff is more like offense based. I feel like they need to attack the offense a lot more.
Well, they didn't have a run game really at all last year, especially at the start. And then Dak goes down. So it was just a bad season. But I took them out more so because that's just not a move the Cowboys are going to make.
You just don't think it's...
I just don't think they're going to do something like that.
Yeah, I can see it. Just because from their stuff they do in the past.
It's just like, there's nothing in past shit that makes me think the Cowboys are going to go.
That makes me think they're going to make a splash in free agency.
Yeah, like, and they would have to trade for him. So it's just like, they're definitely not going that route. Like, the Eagles have a better chance of getting Myles Garrett than the Cowboys. And the Eagles shit's realistic. Like, the Eagles are going to be a top 5 destination for him.
Yeah, you want to talk about a team that could trade for him?
Like the Bears.
Them boys in Chicago.
The Bears could. I think Buffalo is in there as well because they need pass rush. They need somebody that can get to the quarterback. And you would be pairing him up with like Von Miller. And they're kind of like a ragtag group on defense already. They don't really have a name on defense.
Yeah, it's Von Miller.
Yeah,
but like Von Miller, I've seen him get like shut down before many times. Like same with like Micah. Like these players that don't even like make an impact in the game. So like,
it's gonna be like, then you got like teams like Washington who desperately need defensive help, who could use them and have assets to trade for them because they're on the Jane Daniels contract now. So like they could trade for them and still add pieces on top. Like, it's just gonna be very interesting because there's gonna be a team that comes out of like fucking nowhere and is available.
Like New England.
Like, just because they have so much money. So it's gonna be a team like that comes out of nowhere. Like Vegas has like $100 million in cap space. Pairing him up with like Crosby, like would be fucking insane. But
which like going back to the thing about like bad players like figuring out that they can just like, or good players figuring out they could just leave like the bad teams. Like I think Crosby would be like one of the number 1 players to like want to leave. Like I'm shocked he's still in a Raiders uniform.
Because
like,
the past 2 years, it seems like this team is, for one, they just need a quarterback, right?
It's like the Giants.
Like, they just need a quarterback. They have talent on the roster defensively. Same like the Giants. Like, they have talent on the roster defensively. It's just like, they don't have a quarterback. So, like, that just kills everything they have going on, especially for the Raiders. Like, their defense isn't bad. But I feel like he stays. You have Pete Carroll now, which I'll talk about when we talk about Vegas in another episode. But like, I think he stays. But in terms of Myles Garrett, there's going to be some weird team that comes out of there that like, I think that the top teams that when it comes out, it's going to be Eagles, Bills, Commanders, Bears, and they'll throw Dallas in there just because.
I feel like Green Bay.
Or Green Bay would be interesting. Like Green Bay would be fire.
Green Bay
I would hate that
cool.
for our division.
I'd hate it, but it'd be cool.
Yeah. Because they also need pass rush desperately. And they need a name. Like, Green Bay has Jordan Love, but they don't have a name. Like, they don't have a guy. Like,
they need to go get a goddamn receiver. Josh Jacobs said it.
Yeah.
And then they all got pissed off. Like, Dontavian Wicks and, like, Romeo Dobbs, like, went on Twitter and said a bunch of stuff.
I'm like, yeah, well, we do.
You do, yeah.
You do. But the Myles Garrett shit's going to be interesting. It's going to be very fun because we've obviously had this, like, entertaining ass trade deadline for the NBA side of things. So it's going to be interesting. We go into this offseason where we might see some big time like superstar trades which you just never see in the NFL really, especially because you got
Like
Cooper
ever.
Cup as well.
Yeah, Cooper
possibly
Cup.
being traded. I've heard Matthew Stafford possibly being traded because of his contract situation and everything else like that. There's a number of teams that would go get Matthew Stafford and Cooper Cup, really. And Cooper Cup's going to have a lot of value just because he's your perfect, super reliable, super safe option for your quarterback in the league. And he's somebody, I think, if Dallas was to make any move, it would be Cup. To be
pairing Cooper Cup with CD would be elite.
I think if there's any move that they would make, it would be that one rather than Myles Garrett because Cooper Cup's going to be a lot cheaper, and I feel like that helps you out offensively more.
Mm-hmm.
But going into Aaron Rodgers stuff, another player that's probably going to be in the wind because the Jets pretty much shook hands, washed it away, and they can cut Devontae Adams and open up like $35-40 million in cap space for this offseason as well, which I assume they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I wouldn't mind it. You just don't keep Devontae Adams.
No, he was only there because Aaron's there.
So you're not going to keep him and let go of Aaron and think you're going to get a fully committed Devontae Adams at that point. So you're better off just cutting him and then making some cap space and making some room for yourself to kind of fill out the roster in Aaron Glenn's vision. So I'm interested to see, but is Aaron Rodgers done?
I think he should be done.
You think so?
I think you can maybe, depending on where or who has interest in him and everything, like, it maybe come back for another season, but like the only teams that would make sense for Aaron, like actually only team I think would make sense is the Steelers. Like that's the only team that I would look at and I'm like, okay, like the Steelers were kind of just bad quarterback play away from being like being a little different. And like you could just have him for a year. And obviously the Steelers get put in a weird area with their draft pick every year because they somehow always make the playoffs. So they're going to miss out on all the good quarterbacks, and the only quarterback that's going to be there is Milroe, who is still a project.
Or Ewers.
I wouldn't even look at Ewers if I were the Steelers. And like I would look at Milroe, but like he's still, like I said, a project, and you don't know how he could be in the NFL yet.
Then you still have like the Fields discussion on what you want to do with him.
Well, they already said that they don't look at Fields as a long-term.
Okay.
That came out today, actually.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah. They said they didn't look at him as like their long-term option.
I'd be perfectly fine if you went to I think he falls to the second, honestly. Unless you wanted to trade up and make sure you got Milroe, and then you bring in Rodgers just for the year, and if it doesn't work out, you can go into your rebuild process with Milroe.
I see, like that's the problem. Rebuild. What do you rebuild? Do you think the Steelers are just gonna rebuild? No. Like, no, they're not gonna. So it's very the Steelers are just always in a weird spot. I mean, everybody on the defense is going to be playing fine. They're gonna the offense will be back. You still don't even know what you got with Pickens still, like depending on how he feels. But I wouldn't like it, but I would not hate Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh for like a year if you wanted to wait on the quarterback class. Because I know there's a lot of people that don't like the quarterback class.
No. If you're the Steelers' perspective, you have to look at it in the realm of like, okay, we have aging stars all over our roster.
Mm-hmm.
If you could tell me, it would have to work out because they would have to cut them. But if you told me the Steelers went all in this offseason and they were going in next year with an offense of Aaron Rodgers, Pickens, you would need to figure out what you're doing at running back because Najee's a free agent, but you would figure that out.
I think they'll bring him back.
Yeah, so if you go Rodgers, Najee / Warren, Pickens, and then you're able to bring in Devontae Adams to be your 1/2, then I think realistically about the Steelers being a threat because you have that's what you've been missing. Your defense has always been great, but you consistently don't have a number 2 receiver. Your number 1 receiver is really a number 2 at this point in his career, but he's forced into being a number 1. You bring in a veteran like Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Like,
have we hit the point to where like wherever Aaron is, Devontae is?
Yeah.
Or like vice versa.
Especially
like,
if he gets cut. If he gets cut and you're telling the Steelers you can bring in Aaron Rodgers who gives you a way higher ceiling than Russell Wilson, and you're bringing on Devontae Adams, like every team is going to say that they would want to do that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I think that makes the most sense if you're talking about the Steelers. We need to have a realistic talk. We've already had the rumblings about Tomlin and his future this past year, really. And then it's like, do we want to go all in one more time with this core, adding Rodgers and Devontae? Because you'd be able to get those guys for the cheap, really. And then we draft a quarterback, or we just go all in and draft somebody right now that can help a hole on this roster. Like, I think that would make me look at the Steelers differently. But if Rodgers retires, then it's like that's your only option.
If Rodgers retires, I think you go the Milroe direction.
Yeah.
And I think you sign back Fields for a year just in case. Like, maybe, like, Milroe isn't there for some reason, like, when you get to your spot, so then you still have Justin. Because if you look back to the beginning of last season, Justin Fields was winning you games, man. You were 5-2, and you were winning games. And,
I still believe he gave you a higher ceiling than Russell Wilson. Just because of
I
his
think
rushing
that
ability.
I think that they just didn't. I don't really know what they were thinking, honestly. Like, but I understand. That's the only reason. Because I remember when we had this conversation, like, I thought bringing in Russell Wilson was also the better idea because he gave you so much more through the air.
He gave you more in the passing game, but I feel like in those situations where, like, they were in the back half of the year when they had that gauntlet, where I'm just like, teams know what they're getting from Russell Wilson. They know how to game plan for Russell Wilson.
I just thought that they didn't use Fields, like, as much as they could. Like, there were so many times that you could have used both of them in, like, certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Fields is, like, too much of an athlete to kind of be, like, just sitting on the sidelines. So, like, I don't know why they didn't bring him in for more packages and stuff. Like, I get it. Okay, bringing in him on a 4th down makes no sense when you know what they're gonna do. Like, 4th and 2, Justin's in. I wonder what they're gonna do. Yeah. Like, and I'm pretty sure isn't that how they lost the playoff game? I swear to God, that's how they lost.
They got handled by the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think if the only way the Steelers get enticing to me is if they bring in a Rodgers plus a Devontae Adams, because that fills up 2 big needs and gives you a way higher ceiling, especially in a tough division, in a tough AFC. Like, I think that would be the all-in move. But the Steelers are so conservative where they're content being an 8-10 win ball club every year and never getting a quarterback. So it's just like, it's either at this offseason with the Tomlin discussions, this is what makes me think differently going into this offseason, because you've had the Tomlin discussions already, to where, like, you might want to pivot and go all in, because you haven't really gone all in. You've kind of gone all in, but you've made the numbers to where you're not all in. So it's just like, I think with those discussions, they're going to be aggressive to do something like that this offseason, which they should, because it's like, you're going to have to wait on a quarterback a year anyways. Why not push in the chips? And the AFC's been there's no, other than the Chiefs, the Bills can be beat, the Ravens can be beat, the Bengals can be beat.
And, like, the crazy thing is, like, the Steelers have beat the Ravens multiple times.
Like, all these teams outside of the Chiefs have been beat, and now the Chiefs just got exposed. So it's just like, if you're the Steelers, like, you have a good defense, you have a good coach, like, you have all this good infrastructure stuff. Rodgers gives you a higher ceiling. Devontae Adams solves a big need in your roster. Like, you would only have to touch up the edges on the defensive side of the ball. Like, that would be the best pivot move for the Steelers, in my opinion, if they were to go do something like that, which I think they should do. Because even if you bring in Milroe's not a day one starter in the league.
It's a project.
It's a project. He's not a day one starter. So it's just like, you can go draft Milroe, but if you lose Fields to, like, another team and you don't bring back Russell Wilson, you might as well rebuild, because you don't have a quarterback that's ready to play.
I think the Kenny Pickett thing fucked them up. I think it fucked them up. I think that they think that, like, all right, we took a first-round quarterback, and it did not work out, like, at all. So now I think they might be, like, scared to do it again. And, like, I get it, but, like, how else are you going to succeed? Like, you need a quarterback, like, and you can't just keep doing this bullshit where you're gonna, like, go through years of having this quarterback for 1 year or whatever. Because if you want to do that, fuck, you got Sam Darnold right down the road. You might as well sign him to a bag if you don't want to do anything with the draft. Like, so I don't know. That's why the Steelers every year are always a good topic to talk about. because you just never fucking know what they're gonna do.
Right. But the offseason will tell. I know we'll have an offseason. I'll do an offseason video about the Steelers and what they should do and everything else that will come out eventually. But that's all we really have for this episode. Everything else you see about the NFL will be like a mock draft or like offseason videos as well. Going into this offseason, which is going to really be if free agency starts like a month from now, stuff like that. So we'll hear a bunch of rumors and we'll address those as we go about. But that's all I have for this episode. Do we want to wrap it up there?
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Barrel Talk Podcast. Obviously, tune in to future episodes.